Good afternoon, listeners. We are glad to welcome you on our today's webinar focused on the EUDR regulations. Today we will speak about a topic which is still on a very interesting top of the agenda, and we will be having a number of three poll questions to keep you engaged in this webinar. And in order to walk you through our agenda, we will focus on the very basics of EUDR regulation. We will explain what the EUDR is about. We will speak about what is the impact on the market and analyze that. Since this regulation requires some sort of compliance, we will try to give you some tips about compliance strategies. And since there is a lot of information which is not completely true about EUDR, we will also mention certain myths and try to give you correct and proper information. Within the turbulent times and many changes on the regulatory agenda, we will also mention what is the forecast for EUDR, what is going to happen and probably not happen. Today we will have four speakers. My name is Jaroslava Kračunova and I will lead you through today's program and I will be asking you the questions. Here with me we have Colette Slatka, our expert on environmental regulations and currently also on EUDR. Our colleague Vendula Kulichova, who is from the consulting team focusing on regulatory aspects of supply chain and supply chain in general. And our colleague from the tax department, especially from the customs team, Richard Vesecký, who will speak about customs aspects of the EUDR regulation. And right now we have the first question for you, and I will read the question to you. Is your company preparing for the impacts of EUDR? And the responses, the available responses are: number one, yes, we've already started preparations or are taking steps. Yes, we plan to prepare in the near future. That's number two. Number three, no, we are not preparing, but EUDR will affect us. Number four, no, we are not planning to prepare at this time. I will repeat the questions once again so that you can properly respond to it. Is your company preparing for the impact of EUDR? That's the question. And the responses you can vote for: number one, yes, we've already started preparations or are taking steps. Number two, yes, we plan to prepare in the near future. Number three, no, we are not yet preparing, but EUDR will affect us. Number four, no, we are not planning to prepare at this time. The reason why we're asking these questions is the fact that we've been involved in many implementations of other similar regulations. I can just mention GDPR, which for many companies represented sort of a revolution in processes and in governance, since these companies were not ready and not prepared in such a full scope to adopt to these processes. So this is a good way of illustration and demonstration that EUDR is one of those regulations which requires a lot of attention and a lot of time to get ready for it. We will now present you the results. And the results say, which is quite good looking, that majority of you is already preparing. That's a good sign because based on our experience from good projects we are having, the preparation phase will take several months to be sufficiently compliant. Many of you, 38%, is going to prepare in the near future. This is also a good result, but we invite you to really focus on this topic due to the fact, as I mentioned, that the required attention and time will be definitely needed. And just a few of you, 5% and 10%, are either not preparing because it does not affect you, or not preparing because you're not planning to do it at this moment. So we'll see if we convince you to do otherwise. So I'll pass the floor to my colleague Colette, who will explain in more detail what the EU Deforestation Regulation actually means.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, everyone. So today we will be talking about EUDR, as that you already know everything about it, of course. Even following the answers in the poll questioning, we can see that you are already preparing, so you should know all about it. However, as always, it's good to have the basics here, so let's quickly go through them. So what the EUDR is. EUDR is a new regulation. The full name of this legislative act is the Regulation on the Making Available on the Union Market and the Export from the Union Market of certain commodities and products associated with deforestation and forest degradation. So this is the exhausting full name if you would look for it. So what the EUDR is all about, it sets a new obligations for certain companies and actors, and it sets out the new obligations that the relevant commodities and products that you are either placing on the market or making available on the market or importing as well. Well, you cannot carry out these transactions unless you prove and ensure before carrying out what we've mentioned, before you prove that these commodities are deforestation free or forest degradation free, that you prove that you or the commodities have been produced in accordance with the relevant legislation of the country of production, and also that your commodities or products are covered by a due diligence statement. Without these three conditions fulfilled, you cannot place, make available, or export any of these commodities. Mentioning the affected commodities and products, well, which are those? There are these 7 basic commodities that you can see. It's wood, rubber, cattle, cocoa, coffee, soy, and palm oil. Additionally, though, the EUDR influences also relevant products that are produced using these commodities. Basically, those could be tires, furniture, it also can be books, chocolate, different pipes or belts made out of rubber. Also, these can be packaging materials, although there are several specialties when it comes to packaging, paper packaging. These are relevant for EUDR only if they are as a standalone products and not as packaging materials that would be exclusively used to, for example, support, protect, or transport another products placed on the market. In this case, that would not fall under the EUDR scope. So, talking about the relevant products and the relevant transactions, these two conditions together gives us the obligations that are imposed by EUDR to several different actors. We do recognize 2 main groups of obligations, let's say, and those are the obligations that are imposed to operators. Operators are a natural legal person who, within the scope of their commercial activity, places relevant products on the market or exports them. This means also import within the placing. So either imports or exports or placing relevant products on the EU market. These conditions are telling us that you're an operator. What you have to do in regards to EUDR, you must perform due diligence, and also you must submit a due diligence statement through the information system of the Commission. And this has to be done before carrying out the transaction itself. In regards to traders, that's the other group of actors or the obligations. Traders do have a little bit easier obligations in regards to EUDR, they must obtain and retain information from operators for at least 5 years. And if you're asking, okay, well, when am I the trader? For traders, it's every person in the supply chain that you would say is in the middle, meaning that they operate or do the transaction within the scope of commercial activity, and these transactions might be relevant supplies of the products in the union market or something else. It can be even gifting, its distribution, and so on and so forth. There is one exception though, and that is for traders who are non-SME enterprises. Non-SME meaning that you're a large enterprise, you are not small, medium, or micro enterprise. In this case, even though that you would be normally considered trader, if you are non-SME or large enterprise, you are considered as operator, and the aforementioned due diligence obligation will apply to you as well. So that's one thing to keep in mind for the large enterprises. Talking about due diligence obligations in general, there are a few requirements in terms of the due diligence itself that are set out in this regulation. First one is the collection of information, data, and documents. This can involve, for example, geolocation coordinates of the land in the country of production, together with the production dates, for example, another relevant legal documentation, and so on. The second condition or requirement that you have to fill in is the measures for risk assessment. What are you going to assess? Well, it's the risk of non-compliance of your product or commodity, meaning that only no to negligible risk is considered compliant in this regard. If you, however, indicate based on your risk assessment that the risk of non-compliance is higher than no or negligible, then you have to go and implement measures for risk mitigation. These measures should help you to achieve that no or negligible risk. Important thing to know is that if you do not reach this, let's say, scope of the risk, and if the risk is higher and there is no other option for you how to lower it, meaning, for example, you don't have enough information and there is no way how you can get them, then unfortunately the batch of the commodity or product that would be under EUDR would be considered non-compliant, meaning you are forbidden to again place or make available or export such batch of product. Talking about non-compliance, let's take a look at different sanctions that that can be imposed under this regulation. Based on what we know, it's in some kind of degree always fines, always financial penalties. In this case, it's up to 4% of the company's total annual turnover, which seems quite steep. So it's good to keep in mind that the compliance here really is something that that should be not negotiable. However, it's another type of sanctions as well. For example, temporary ban on placing relevant products or commodities on the market. It can be also confiscation of affected products on the border by the customs authorities. And also it can be exclusion from public procurement and access to public funding. So if your company is heavily into the public funding, for example, and this is a huge deal for you, then keep in mind that this can also be important for you in terms of this aspect of your business. Let's take a look very quickly into the whole timeline of the regulation and its coming into force. So the regulation already entered into force on 29th June 2023. So from this date forward, you were supposed to kind of prepare already for the obligations that you will have. The first deadline that we can see, and we will be talking about this again by the end of our today's webcast, is the risk benchmarking of countries that should be published this summer. First harsh deadline, though, that is coming to companies or enterprises that are large and medium is 30th December 2025. So end of this year is the date where the obligations apply to the large and medium enterprises. The small and micro undertakings have the prolongation or postponement by 6 months. So those are, for those, the interesting deadline is 30th June 2026. With this, I will give the floor to Richard, and he will be going or walking you through the affected commodities and products.
Okay, thank you very much. So now let's take a closer look at which commodities and products are subject to the regulation and its imposed obligation. The primary basis for determining specific products, as already mentioned my colleague Colette, as the Annex 1 of the regulation. This annex lists the tariff classification codes for commodities and products which are covered by the regulation. So the actual classification of the commodities and the products follows the EU customs tariff. So for first and foremost, it is necessary to correctly classify a commodity or product according to the EU tariff, and then compare this classification with the Annex 1 of the regulation. If the specific code is listed in the Annex 1, the goods may be subject of the regulation. So which specific commodities and products are affected by the regulation? In the general overview, the various groups of the following goods can be assigned to the respective of the commodities. We have a cattle. So for the cattle, it's the live cattle, but also the meat, fresh, chilled or frozen. It's edible offal from cattle or cattle liver, raw cattle hides or processed cattle hides and skins, and for the processed cattle leather. For the woods, the chapter 44, 47, 48 or 49 of the EU customs tariff, we have here crates, boxes or pallets, but also pulp and the paper, printed books, newspaper, brochures and other printing industry products. For the rubber, when you look on the rubber, you have to know that only, or this chapter applies only to the products and the commodities which are derived from the para rubber tree or Hevea brasiliensis tree. So that means that does not cover synthetic rubber or other rubbers as a gutta percha, guial, balata, etc. So this chapter covers natural rubber or mixed rubber if the blend contains the rubber from the Hevea brasiliensis tree. Also tires, rubber in tubes, clothing products, rubber sheets, blades, strips, and profiles. Then we have here the palm oil of the chapters 12, 15, 23, 29, or 38 of the EU customs tariff. You can find there the palm nuts or kernels, but also the crude and refined palm oil and its derivatives. Very important chapter is the cocoa. You have here the cocoa beans, cocoa mass, also cocoa butter and the cocoa powder, and very important chocolate and food products containing cocoa. Then we have the coffee. This covers the green, roasted or ground coffee, but this is excluding the instant coffee. So the instant coffee doesn't belong to the EUDR. Then we have a soy with the soybeans, soy flour, or crude or refined soybean oil. There is also important how to determine whether a specific product is subject to the regulation. So there are two conditions. The product is a relevant goods whose tariff classification codes is listed in the Annex 1 of the EUDR regulation, and the product contains the relevant commodity. So in other words, if the tariff classification code is listed in the annex, but the product does not contain the relevant commodity, then the product is not subject to the regulation. And similarly, a product is not subjected to the regulation if it contains a relevant commodity, but its tariff classification code is not listed in the Annex 1 of the EUDR regulation. So each Essex product must be always compared with the Annex 1. Also, the special attention should be given to the bulk trade and composite products. If they contain relevant commodity even partially, and they are listed in the Annex 1, they are also subjected to the regulation.
Okay, so let's say you identified all the commodities and products that are relevant for your company and that EUDR applies to. After you identify those, what you really need to do is to gain the overview of your supply chain. As you can see on the slide, on the example of cocoa, the supply chains of today are very, very complex, from the local farmers and transportation to the warehouses and stations, to the transportation that is outside the European Union, all the way to the European Union customs, and the different warehouses and transportations within the European Union. At the moment, when the goods arrive to your company, it is also really important to think about that you will need to report to your customers and to really have the systems set up in place in your company so that you are able to trace all the batches within your company itself. So all that I'm saying shows that there are really high requirements for visibility. You really need to know your supply chains, who supplies to you, what is the maturity of my suppliers, and how they manage importation, their information. And at the same time, you really need to know which suppliers are key for you so that you can educate them and work with them really closely so that you are aligned with the requirements of the obligation. You really need to know all the transition points of each batch of the product that you are importing and or exporting. At the same time, you really need to have the process in place for managing and reporting to your customers, and you really need to have the overview of all the data in there. So as you can see, the demand for the data collection and data management at the same time on the traceability of your data is really high, because the data must be reported within the context of the whole due diligence system that you need to create.
Following up on what my colleague just said, I would like to invite you to think on all the aspects of the preparation that she just mentioned. How long will this take to gather, to map, to monitor, to change, to maybe even implement new processes for you? This is why, and we will talk about it a little bit later also, it's really good to start the preparation as soon as possible. Also, we understand that there might be some kind of hesitation in terms of preparation, and we do recognize that there are a lot of steps that can be done before you really go into the whole due diligence itself and the submission of those statements and everything. So please think on everything that you need to do in order for you to be ready to take the next step of designing your whole due diligence system. But we will talk a little bit more about those kind of options that you have later. So thinking about your preparation and the fact that it should start really, really early on with your cocoa farmer, with your suppliers, it's really good to know this, how or the readiness of your suppliers, of course, but also if you do sense that there is a lack of data or that you know that the traceability is there 100%, you do have the data and the collection of the information will be smooth. This is the first step of your preparation. As my colleague also mentioned, there are a few pinpoints and, let's say, roadblocks that might be there for you when you're preparing for your EUDR obligations. One of them, oftentimes, is the traceability itself. As mentioned before, you do need to know of every batch of the product, every single turn that it makes in your supply chain. It sounds a little bit complex and might be terrifying, but with the right data and with the right system, this is something that also can be overcome. So where are we with the whole supply chain, and what's the first deadline or first point for you where your documents will be audited or checked in some way is the customs. You can see that on the slide with the marking that the customs is the place where you do have to have the due diligence already done, where you have to have the due diligence statement in the due diligence information system from the Commission, and you also have to have available the reference number of your due diligence statement, because this is a mandatory part of your customs declaration documents. That's the key part of those obligations when you are importing the EUDR relevant commodities and products from third countries into the European Union. Maybe I would like to invite Jarka to comment a little bit more on the customs controls and checks.
We've already spoken on and notified you about the sanctions, but sanctions which are stipulated in EUDR are not the only hurdle or not the only scarecrow of this regulation. What might sometimes be neglected is the fact that once you do not have the proper documentation, which is represented by the reference number, which confirms that all of the homework you are supposed to have finished is done and ready. The goods you are which you are purchasing, which you are importing, or on the other hand, exporting, do not have this document. You can imagine it's like if you're a person going for a trip to a third country without a passport, that means you will be stopped at the border. Here, the goods as well will be stopped at the customs control. When you imagine a large trucks of goods which you are willing to ship and import, this might really cause disruption of the supply chain, disruption of your production, disruption of your relationships with your customers, because you won't be able to produce your products from these goods and materials. You won't be able to supply these to your customers. You may be facing claims from your customers, etc. So being prepared before this moment, before the goods reach to the customs control, and having everything ready is really critical in order to be able to sustainably carry out your business.
And also talking about the whole supply chain, the actors in the supply chain, your suppliers, your customers, if you are the one in the middle, you have to think about the contractual setup with them, because EUDR is really the disruptor of those contractual obligations. You do have to think on having some kind of review of the contracts that you already have. And of course, before the review itself, you have to negotiate with your partners the new conditions that you will have to put into those contracts, which might be, again, kind of long and complex process for a lot of them.
Mm-hmm. Maybe one comment from my side as well, because the fact that you as a trader or an operator, you are obliged based on EUDR, but your suppliers and third parties you're doing business with, which are outside of EU, are basically not directly obliged by this regulation. So in order to receive the relevant information, documentation, and cooperation from their end, which is very critical for you, you have to oblige them contractually.
With this, I would like to again give the floor to Vendula.
Thank you. EUDR is often seen as a purely regulatory requirement, but for companies, it can be so much more. It can be a tool for improving the supply chain and not necessarily evil, because businesses can really leverage the regulation to enhance transparency, efficiency, and even profitability. So you can see here there are 3 levels that the company can take to really go with the regulation. The first step towards the compliance is ensuring traceability of raw materials and to really like fulfill the requirements that the regulation has. So the companies must prove their products to not come from deforested areas. They need to implement the processes to track the origins. They need to geolocation data, etc. For sure, they protect their reputation and they are transparent with the reporting, but they can really leverage this to rethink their procurement strategies. They can take the next step and not only report the origin of the raw materials, but actively seek more sustainable suppliers, prioritize certified suppliers, establish long-term partnerships and educate their suppliers so that they, in the end, have a better data that they can utilize for themselves for prediction of the production that they have, and they lower the risk of their supply chain disruptions. Finally, they can also use this to gain a competitive advantage. They will not just comply with the regulation, but will fundamentally change the way that their supply chain operate. They can adjust their product portfolio to include more sustainable alternatives of the raw materials that they're using, and they can invest in digital tools to support their traceability and their data management. That way, they end up with optimized supply chains and strengthened adaptability, and at the same time, they can really gain a competitive advantage in the long term from the point of view of the sustainability. So, to conclude this, really, like the companies have 3 paths, and it's really up to them which strategy they choose to comply with the regulation.
And now we have the second question for you. And the question is, what do you perceive as the biggest challenge in preparing for EUDR? Response number 1 is supply chain mapping. Response number 2 is obtaining necessary data in relation to the relevant land or a plot of land, meaning the geolocation. Establishing a due diligence system, that's number 3. And number 4, administrative burden when reporting to the EU Commission information system. I'll read the question once again. What do you perceive as the biggest challenge in preparing for EUDR? Number 1, supply chain mapping. Number 2, obtaining necessary data in relation to the relevant land. Number 3, establishing a due diligence system. Number 4, administrative burden when reporting to the EU Commission information system. Based on our experience, the companies we've been working with, and also many other companies, are lacking proper process maps or having proper information, let's say, on how the processes with respect to purchasing of goods and until the production, how it actually works. So it is quite possible that this area and this topic will take some time for the companies. Furthermore, there has been a lot of discussion about how the companies should be gathering information about the origin of the product, especially focusing on the geolocation of the plots of land where the products were planted or harvested. There are many new solutions available. It's becoming a little bit of a jungle. So we will see also what the new updated frequently asked questions will lead us, and how they will guide us in this area. Further, when we speak about the due diligence system, usually large companies do have some sort of a governance and organization set up for various processes that they have, and setting up the due diligence system based on EUDR may in some way be complementary to what the companies have in place already. However, on the other hand, a lot of updates and tweaks will be needed in terms of the current governance and operations of those companies. So this is also something to be considered. And as regards the administrative burden and reporting to EU Commission, gathering all the relevant information and basically documents, due diligence statements that need to be uploaded, it will be very administratively complex based on the number of, let's say, transactions and purchases, etc. So this needs to also be considered from the perspective of manpower that you will need. So I believe we have the results. So let's see how you're coping with this. These are quite interesting results, because we had a webcast yesterday, a local one in the Czech Republic, and the results were slightly different. So maybe other companies outside of the Czech Republic are having a different approach. So majority of you see the biggest complexity in obtaining necessary data in relation to the relevant land. That's correct, but the developments of the IT solutions are quite quick, so we believe that, let's say, in a year, this issue might not be as serious as we see it right now. To the contrary, only a few of you, 20%, is seeing supply chain mapping as an issue or a complex and difficult task. And further, even less portion of you is viewing setting up the due diligence system as a challenge, which is actually quite contrary to our experience on the project. If we could vote here in this meeting room, we would probably all vote for establishing the due diligence system as something that is going to be one of the most challenging tasks. As regards the administrative burden when reporting to the EU Commission, also you do not fear this topic. Maybe AI is going to help you out with this. That's also something we can consider, and could be one of the players in making our life easier. So we can move on to the next topic and some practical tips of how to tackle compliance with EUDR.
Thank you. And following actually on, again, the results of the poll, we are going to be talking a little bit more about the due diligence system itself and how to approach to the setup, what to do so that we still are practical and realistic. Because from our experience that we've gathered from the last year, maybe preparing several clients and companies for this very complex regulation, what we've gathered is that not every single company is in the same situation, of course, and there are few approaches that you can take to be practical when it comes to the compliance. So first of all, what we come across is a company that does not have the as a core business really the EUDR relevant commodities and products. Let's say on an example that company A has a core business outside of the EUDR. It's something that it's not relevant for it. It can be, for example, some kind of food business, but nothing in the scope. However, on the website, they do sell and import, let's say, chocolate. The chocolate, however, is really not the core that they are focusing on. It's merely a product that they've come across and they put it into their portfolio to make it more appealing to the customer. So when you do look into situations like this, of course, we do not want to approach it with let's do a whole due diligence system, very robust and so on. This might be the approach of the company when it feels like there is some kind of a competitive advantage with still having the chocolate in the portfolio. However, there can be the management decision being done with, okay, the chocolate is really not our core business. It's EUDR relevant. To be compliant, we would have to invest this amount of energy and people, team, and so on and so forth into this agenda that we simply do not have to if we do not include chocolate in our portfolio. So this is one of the options or approach A that we see on the market that is happening. So that's why we stress that the mapping of the HS codes and the mapping of your supply chain of the transactions is so essential. Because doing this, you can easily come across the information that the HS codes that you thought are under EUDR in the scope, they're actually not. Maybe you fear because of import of some rubber products, but then you're going to figure out that the rubber is simply not organic, so there is nothing that would be EUDR relevant for you. So that's why the preparation and the whole assessment of your situation is so crucial. Approach B that we hear a lot is actually situation when the parent company is the one who is in charge. But let's say the company B, that is our client, is the subsidiary, and this client tells us we are waiting for every single document from the parent company. They are taking care of this. We are on hold. We should wait and do nothing until we get some kind of guidance and documentation from our parent. This approach might be quite risky. What sometimes is misunderstanding is that EUDR and the due diligence system is not one solution fits all. The subsidiary of the parent company can take some kind of inspiration from the due diligence system that the parent company sets in place. However, as you see on the slide, there still is a lot of work to be done. You have to simply tailor-made the due diligence system to your internal processes of your company, because every single entity is obliged to have their own due diligence system, and again, is not simply enough to have the one that your parent company gives you. So this is something to consider. In terms of waiting for some kind of more in-depth information from your parent, again, you can prepare, you can map out which is the most important, the internal processes of your company, see where the gaps are, and then once you get some kind of more in-depth information from your parent, you can simply take what is relevant for you and implement the rest into your company and make it your compliance strategy. Approach C is when the company does not have any parent company and the EUDR relevant products and commodities are their core products of their portfolio, then they do have to do the full-on preparation. In this case, what needs to be done is actually we can switch up those two graphics on this slide. First, you have to map out your internal processes. You have to see where the change management needs to happen so that you are EUDR compliant, where new processes have to be put in place and implemented so that you're again in compliance with EUDR, and then you go and do the due diligence system, because even though it says it's a system, it's kind of a cookbook, it's a document, it's let's say, description of how you as a company do your due diligence, what processes you do, who has it under their wings, meaning the team, the people responsible, and so on and so forth. So this is a complex process that again takes months and months, as Jarka said, and there are different approaches you can take. There are different things you can do in the preparation, but standing still and not doing anything is really not something that we can say is really well, something you should do.
Yeah, because at the end of the day, what would happen if you rely on some false information, false hopes that EUDR will be cancelled, etc. You may find yourself in a situation in December or November when none of these fake promises come true or fake ideas come true, and the EUDR will still be on the table, and you will be facing the situation as described already before, that you would not be able to import the goods because the goods will not be considered EUDR compliant. They would be stopped at the customs control and you won't be able to do anything with it. So it's definitely worthwhile to be prepared for this situation and not to leave it at to the very last moment, because the priorities in November, December, and towards the end of the year or the second half of the year might be different, and squeezing in to the schedule of priorities preparation for EUDR might not be the best idea. And at the end of the day, who will be liable for that? It would be the top management and the responsible leading employees, top employees, who are responsible either to find out that this matter needs to be taken care of and considered as the priority, notified to the board, etc., to the top management, so that it has appropriate attention for the company.
And maybe to just paint the picture of how complex these kind of steps are, looking into the whole graphics that you can see, from legal to procurement, logistics, operations, you have to have those compliance clauses into your contracts, as we've mentioned. Within procurement, there are preparation, you have to gather the information. Logistics, you have to ensure traceability. Operations within warehouse management, and so on and so forth. So really waiting for something or someone might be very risky at this point.
Yeah, definitely. And we've basically touched upon the next topic, which is our part about the myths which are accompanied with EUDR, sometimes relevantly on the table due to the fact that EUDR applicability has been postponed and there has been a lot of business pressure, let's say, to reduce its scope, etc. But as we go to at least some of the risks and myths that our clients are often facing, the idea is that EUDR is just one of the regulations which we will quickly go through, fix certain things, prepare certain documents, prepare some contract in order to, let's say, delegate the obligations to the third parties, to our suppliers. But this is not actually the case. By just having the paper compliance in this particular case will not be sufficient. EUDR is one package and it needs to be taken as one package. Being compliant with half of the EUDR is meaning you are not compliant in general. So this is something to be really considered. Another area to cover and to highlight is companies sometimes feel like, okay, we are not dealing with coffee, chocolate, palm oil, soy, etc. However, they're forgetting the devil in the detail, which is let's say paper and packaging materials, wooden boxes, etc. So it really is necessary to consider not your core business, but also the other items that you need for your business, whether it's a rubber belt in your factory or it's cardboard boxes that you are purchasing or selling, let's say, to third parties. You can go through the other myths that we are saying, but basically we've been pointing them out throughout the whole presentation. And in order to be able really to cover the rest of our presentation, I will hand over the floor back to Colette.
So there is one more question that awaits us, and that: has the introduction of the omnibus proposal affected your approach to preparing for EUDR? Please select one of these options. Those are: yes, we have stopped all preparations. Yes, we have taken a minimalist approach. No, preparations are continuing as planned. No, preparations are not taking place. And the last one: I do not know what omnibus is. So again, has the introduction of the omnibus proposal affected your approach to preparing for EUDR? Yes, we have stopped all preparations. Yes, we have taken a minimalist approach. No, preparations are continuing as planned. No, preparations are not taking place. And I do not know what omnibus is. Why do we actually have this question here is, again, our experience from last, let's say, weeks, not even a month since the omnibus proposal was published. For those who do not know what omnibus is, don't worry, we will cover it very briefly. So if this is the option that you feel like should be ticking, please do so. No worries, we are going to go deeper into that. But a lot of our clients is actually wondering if the omnibus will be affected by, or if EUDR will be affected by omnibus, if maybe EUDR will be put into omnibus or something like that. So that's why we're asking, and maybe let's take a look at the results of these questions. No, preparations are continuing as planned is the option that is been voting for the most, which is really good to hear. We do have some participants who are not quite sure what omnibus is. So for those, let me just quickly and briefly summarize that omnibus is actually the proposal of European Commission, which is supposed to revise reporting obligations in regards to the reporting of non-financial information, and also company responsibilities regarding supply chains. It concerns multiple directives and legal acts. The ones who are or should be by the proposal affected is the CSRD, CSDDD, EU taxonomy, and then CBAM was also added to omnibus. So as you can see, and maybe we can go to another slide so that you see this in the whole perspective. EUDR is not a part of the omnibus proposal, so the revision and maybe even simplification of the directives that I've mentioned is not really concerned in terms of the EUDR and the obligations that are set by EUDR. Maybe briefly talking about what could change in terms of EUDR, because of course we can see that geo's kind of the mood lately is to really succumb some kind of environmental obligations altogether. So we understand. However, in terms of EUDR, there are no such plans at the moment. Actually, just the opposite. On the last multitasker, multi-stakeholder platform from the EUDR was mentioned that this regulation should not be postponed. It should not be reopened for another changes. What the Commission is foreseeing is that there will be more let's say, updates to the frequently asked questions and the guidance that are accompanying this regulation. So there are going to be some kind of explanations how the regulation should be interpreted. However, the frequently asked questions and the guidance, again, is not legally binding, so that's one thing to keep in mind. And they do not replace or amend the provision of the EUDR in any sense or way. At least that's what the EU Commission is saying. So what is ahead of us in terms of the change of the FAQs? Very interesting agendas or subjects that I feel like are going to be very helpful for a lot of clients and companies. Amongst them, for example, there will be additional details on the alignment of the export by small and medium-sized enterprises, also the ascertaining that upstream due diligence was exercised. This is the Article 4, Section 9. That is really interesting for me to see how this is going to be interpreted as well. In terms of the deadline, this should be published in April. So this month is the month where we should be waiting for the publishing of the new updated FAQs. In terms of the benchmarking, which we covered or simply mentioned on the first what is EUDR slide, well, the benchmarking of the countries should already be working on, and all the stakeholders together with the Commission and another, of course, even the companies themselves who are affected by EUDR are working on this together with the representatives of different states. This benchmarking should be published at latest by June 2025. That's the most updated information by the Commission, so I gather that they're really working on it. Also, one more piece of information regarding the benchmarking. The Commission that is working on this should be meeting again this month, so in April 2025, to really finalize the proposal and the implementing act where the benchmarking will be put into. So that's the latest from the Commission. Looking into the risks of delayed preparation, we've already commented on this. There are several approaches that the companies can take in terms of the risk assessment of the investment versus maybe changes in the future. But as you can see, the EUDR is not really affected by Omnibus. It's not really affected by anything else at the moment. The whole movement is going forward. Everybody's working on it. So there are no indications that this should be changing in the future. So no indication of postponement, nor even that the whole regulation is just not going to exist in the year. This is not the case. So we do stress out that the companies that are affected should be doing their preparation as soon as possible and moving forward with another steps if the basic preparation was already done.
And really, to sum it up, we really stress out that as we said, the management needs to be ready to respond after December 2025, how they're going to act. And if there are any issues with production, with supplies and sale of their products due to the fact that they were not ready, it will going to be their responsibility, and they will have to explain why they did not prepare. So do not be one of them. Prepare properly. And in case you need any assistance, respond to questions, help with analyzing the FAQs, which we are waiting for, here's our team. We are ready and happy to help you out, not just from the legal perspective, but also from the perspective of impacts on the supply chain and mapping and preparing due diligence system, so in full scope. We are leaning towards the end of our webcast. We would like to thank you for your attention, but please, before you leave or after we really finish, please take a few moments to reflect on today's webinar, and we will appreciate receiving your feedback in the feedback form which will follow. So thank you very much. Have a great rest of the day and be successful with your implementations.
Thank you so much. Goodbye.